lady. Thanks for the ride.
Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am super excited because for this episode of Sledgehammer Reviews, I have a very good friend of mine, someone I went to high school with. He's doing great in the horror community himself. I have from the Journey with a Cinephile podcast, David Garrett. Dave, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. For those of you that don't know, I've had David as a guest before, but like I said, Journey with a Cinephile podcast. Him and I just recently did like a dissection of the original Creepshow.
Yep.
So I thought it'd be fun to bounce back and do a Creepshow 2 on Sledgehammer Reviews. But if you want to listen to the Creepshow 1 review we did, that link is down here in the description. If you want to listen to that before or after this one, see our feelings on Creepshow 1, and then you'll get our feelings on Creepshow 2. So what's going on in your world, man? Anything new you got coming up?
I mean, just kind of doing the same old, same old. Early in the year, I have more like theme shows that I've been doing where I had a list that's like 400 movies long that I've picked up from other podcasts. So what I do is I just put like all the numbers into a randomizer, and whichever one comes up, I just watch it. And so I've been kind of doing a little bit of that, trying to get into, some 2021 movies. But now my next episode is going to fall into February. So I split it up half and half of the month, where I'm going to do women's appreciation for 2 movies that are directed by a woman. And then I'm going to do 2 that are directed by African Americans. So that way I'm kind of, representing those. And I try to do ones that I've never seen before. So that's kind of the theme I'm doing for February coming up.
And with February being Black History Month, what better time to honor some African-American directors that have had an impact in the genre. So I was actually planning on doing a episode on the people under the stairs in February to talk about the importance of what that movie meant in 1991, how those social issues are still going on today in 2021. You're 20 years later and we're still facing, or was that 30 years later? God damn, we're old, dude. 30 years later, we're still fighting against the same demons that we were talking about back in 1991. So, I think it's amazing that you're doing that, dude. That's really cool to honor some of the women and African-American men men and women that have made a big impact in the genre. And I mean, one of my favorite people in the horror genre right now is Jordan Peele. Yeah. Poole. Goddamn. Jordan Peele. And I mean, like Us, Get Out. I think he's done amazing jobs with them. And he's doing a Candyman reboot. He's also he just announced he was doing a People Under the Stairs reboot. So I think with him doing a People Under the Stairs reboot, it could be just absolutely fantastic, man. I think it could be really good.
Because I heard on a podcast recently that he was going to do the reboot for it. I don't know if he's necessarily going to direct it, but I know he's at least going to be like behind it. And I mean, it works well for his whole thing, where he does so much with being able to kind of mix comedy in with it. Cause I mean, there's that kind of built-in comedy with People Under the Stairs that like Wes Craven did, where that sometimes I think kind of hurts it at times because it kind of diminishes the message. But I feel like, Get Out had a lot of kind of built-in humor for it, and it still has such cultural impact from it.
TS motherfucking A, man. We handle shit. But I feel like with the People Under the Stairs, and also a movie that I recently reviewed, you and I have talked about how much of a fan I am of it, but Tales from the Hood. Yep. I feel like those movies are horror movies first with a message. They're not preaching at you and then putting horror on the back burner. Exactly. They're putting the horror in the foreground. But just much like Night of the Living Dead in 1968, you have that social what's the word I'm looking for? Like that social commentary. Yep. But it's a horror movie first with a message. And that's what I like. I would rather that than watch a preachy movie that has, tidbits of horror in it. So if you can make your movie a good horror movie, much like Get Out, and have a great message behind it, I think that you've really done something great. And, Jordan Peele with Candyman's another one that has a lot of racial issues behind it. So I think that he can do a great job with these movies. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we get started, I do want to remind everybody, click the links down here in the description. Listen to our Creepshow 1 episode. Make sure you're subscribing to his podcast. He has a lot of fun. I love listening to him. He has one of the best intros ever until he gets you with the Halloween 3 one and gets it stuck in your head forever. But make sure you're following him on social media as well. I got all his links down here. But today, my friend, we are here to talk about Creepshow 2. So I figured what we would do is we'll start and we'll go right in order of the segments. Okay. We'll talk about what we like, what we dislike. And at the end, what I would like to do is compare Creepshow 1 to Creepshow 2 and which one we like more and what our favorite segment was from Creepshow 2. Are you okay with that?
Sounds good to me.
All right, man. So we start off with little Billy. And I don't know if he's supposed to be Billy from part 1 or if this is a different Billy.
I thought the same exact thing because I was like, wait, that's weird that it's the same name. I almost feel like it's not, just because the cover of Creepshow, like the magazine that he tosses down, is the cover of like, or is that like last sequence that you see where he's like stabbing the thing? So that's the only thing I think that it's probably not. But I do honestly think it's some sort of a nod to the previous movie.
And that's what I felt, because I feel like he hasn't aged at all. And I feel like there is a gap here. And it's awesome. You have the creep right at the beginning, you know, throwing the comic books. You're waiting, oh, the little Billy. You know, I love the creep in this one. Now, what I do want to talk about, because I figure since we're talking about Billy in the opening, we'll talk about that one and get that all the way out of the way first, because I don't even really consider this a wraparound.
Yeah.
Now, the one problem I have with this film, I don't like how the Billy sequences are all animated. I think obviously with budget back then, they couldn't have done how they end it with, but I would have really loved to have seen him taking on the bullies and all that in person rather than in cartoon. What about, how are your feelings on that?
100% with you. I'm fine if you kind of do what they did in the first one, where you kind of go to cartoon before you transition into a segment. I hate that they went cartoon for everything after that beginning, and then they go back to it being a normal movie by the end of it. I do agree with you. I think it's budgetary is the problem there, but it is less impactful when you go cartoon for me, because I don't necessarily care as much, because I don't look at them as like real people. I kind of just look at them as like, oh, it's just a cartoon that's kind of being fun about what they're doing here.
Dude, I've seen what Wile E. Coyote goes through. Trust me, you cartoons will be okay.
Right.
But one thing I do want to talk about, it is cool, is the Venus flytraps at the end, because throughout the cartoon wraparound, Billy has bought something and the bullies are obviously picking on him. They stomp on the bulbs that he has. Billy leads them into the woods and we get the Venus flytraps that are giant human eating Venus flytraps, and seeing Billy get the last laugh and getting the bullies. I was kind of dark because they are still kids. Right. Seeing the bullies getting eaten by these Venus flytraps. And then you have the big bully, the big bad that's in there and he's pushing up, but it's just not, you know, it's a wrap for him. He's done. So, essentially that's the wraparound for this one. And I would say if we're counting the wraparound, I'll just say it at the beginning because I don't think we're going to, but if we're counting the wraparound, it would be my least favorite segment of the film. Yeah, but I don't want to count it. I just want to count the 3 main ones. And let's get into our first one, Old Chief Woodenhead. Essentially this takes place in a town where it's all dried up. You know, there's nobody really there anymore. And you have the Spruces, and they still own this little shop, and they have a Chief Old Woodenhead outside that he's always painting on. He gets a visit from Benjamin White Wolf, I want to say is his name.
It's something like that. It's either White Wolf or it's White Moon or something along those lines. But yeah, it's definitely White something is his last name.
Right. And he comes over and he gives the Spruces all his beloved treasures from his people, his society that they have. I don't know the right way to say it without sounding terrible, but you know, he is Native American, and they are completely Native American. And at this point, Martha Spruce says, you know, I was just telling him that we shouldn't trust people. You're too trusting. And here you come to tell us that, to show me that I was wrong about you. And it's over $200,000, I think he says, in rock candy is what his nephew ends up calling it. But so now we get Fat Stuff, Kavanaugh, and Ben come into the shop. You want to talk about this scene a little bit?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting, is that we have this Native American come in with his 2 friends who, I mean, you can clearly see he's a bully. Like, I mean, he scares them no matter what. They all think they're just going to go in there, kind of just rough everybody up, steal some stuff, and get out of there. But it's just interesting is that Native Americans, for the most part, are known for like traditions and everything. And we have this person who's breaking that in his nephew, who's there to steal that treasure so he can go to Hollywood, where his beautiful hair is going to get him paid and late, according to him. But like, it's interesting because of how much it like bothers Mr. Spruce to give up that treasure to them, because he's kind of like Ben is, where he's all about his honor. Like he's like, we took so much money from this community and that we have to give back. And if it's just us, keeping open and just sticking with everybody, we have to do that. And he's willing to give his life for this treasure, which I mean, ultimately that's what ends up happening, where he gets murdered by this trio here.
Right. And one thing I want to touch on that you said with Ray Spruce, because when he comes to give him the treasure, Ray's like, I can't accept this.
Yeah.
And the uncle is like, look, if you don't accept this, we're beggars. Right now we're borrowers, and that's acceptable. But if we're beggars, we can never forgive you. Like you said, they have that pride.
Yep.
And, his nephew, Ben, is just sitting there and he's got the Martha. He's got the shotgun to her and he's like, give me that rock candy. He's like, this came from your people. And then Fat Stuff starts messing around with him. And that's when the shotgun goes off and gets Martha in the side. And at first it looks like even Ben is shocked that he just shot her.
Right.
Like he didn't mean to almost. And Fat Stuff throws up, and then, Ray starts walking towards her and then he puts a couple in Ray and then Ray falls down. And it's just, like I said, then Fat Stuff throws up. And what you were talking about before, how he's a bully. He tells Kavanaugh, he's like, go get your car at Hollywood. We're going to, or Rich Boy, we're going to Hollywood sooner than we thought. And he points a shotgun at him. He's like, don't even think about running off on me, Kavanaugh. I'll find you. So it's almost like they don't know how deep a shit they're in with this guy.
Right.
So, and then we cut to Fat Stuff in his trailer and loco. Oh, I did forget to add something. When they walk out, he looks up and he's like, and no more of these fucking red faces. And he shoots the wooden Indian.
Yep.
And then as they drive away, the wooden Indian takes his hand and gets the war paint and puts it on his face and lets off like a heartbroken, growl because of Ray being killed.
Yep.
And then they go and you see the arrows coming in and getting Fat Stuff, seeing him. And it's a cool scene, the way that they shoot it. And they shoot back and forth between nudie magazines and Iron Maiden posters. And he's just getting an arrow back in him every time it cuts back. And then obviously process of elimination, we move to the Kavanaugh house. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, this one's interesting because he's trying to sneak out and his parents have no idea what he's trying to do. But we get to hear as he gets to the door to the garage that there is something quite loud happening in the garage. And when he opens up, his car is just completely decimated. And I mean, that's actually something that gets talked about earlier, is that his parents had given him, what is it, a Firebird, I believe they had said?
Firebird, man.
Yeah. So, like, he has a super nice car and he gets out there. And that's actually something I like here, is that he's using a tomahawk in order to try to do this. So they're actually incorporating the different types of weaponry that they would use. And then his ends up getting his comeuppance, we just see the shadow of it. And then the blood just spraying all over the wall and the door and everything like that.
And then when the garage door is shutting, you see him just sprawled out on his car.
Yep.
Then we cut to Ben and he's getting ready. And what I love about this one is, like you said, with the Native American imagery, Ben tries to escape when he sees old Chief Woodenhead, but Woodenhead grabs him through the door and pulls him out and he scalps him.
Yep.
And which is, something Native Americans, that was one of their war traditions. Yep. And he also, it's ironic because of how much Ben loved his hair. Like you said, It's going to get me paid and laid, man. So to see him get his comeuppance and, dying because of something he truly, truly loved, a person as selfish as him, that was great. And then we cut back to the uncle, who I also think is Benjamin. I think they're both Benjamin, if I'm not mistaken. But the treasure is laying with him as he's sleeping. And he's almost insulted, and he wakes up and goes back to the Spruce hardware store, and he sees old Chief Woodenhead holding a scalp, and Akuana Chief Woodenhead, and that's how this one ends. And I think that one, I will talk about it more, but I like this one more now than I did as a kid for a lot of, like you said, the imagery and how they performed in this one. And next we cut to the raft. I will let you start on the raft.
So this is an interesting one. This is the first segment that I'd ever seen, and it was years before I actually watched the rest of this movie. But we have a group of 4 college kids as they're heading out to this raft that they know about on this kind of remote lake. And it's interesting though, is it's mid-September, so the water's freezing and nobody knows where they're going, and they're just kind of smoking weed and kind of just having a good time as they drive out there. But we actually have an interesting grouping of people here is because we got the jock, and I believe his name is Deke, I think is his name.
Yep.
And then we have his girlfriend, who's kind of the prim and prissy type girl. And then we got the nerdy guy with his girlfriend who's quiet. So we kind of have all these different groups of people in this one little grouping here. Now they get out there, they swim out to this raft where it's water's ice cold. And that's when they notice that there is this thing that they looks like an oil slick that traps them on there. And it is a carnivorous type organism here.
Yeah. And one thing that you just brought up about her being like the prim and prissy one, like, and I think it's hilarious that her name's Laverne. Like, I think that's so funny that that's what they named her in this. But yeah, they get on the raft and, you know, they're looking out at this thing they think is an oil slick. And Deke's just, you know, what do you think it is, Pancho? You're the smart one. You went to camp. And he's like, I've never seen no shit like this, man. Like, and then Rachel, she's smoking the joint and she's touching it. And you see the blob of shit come up and grab her arm and pull her in. And at this point, I don't know his name. They keep calling him Pancho, but I'm pretty sure his name's not Pancho. You know,
I don't remember what his name is offhand.
Yeah. And, you know, he's like, he freaks out and Deke's like, what happened? And then Rachel or Laverne's like, did she fall in? And then she pops up and she's just melting, you know, and Deke's like, let her go. She's done for, man. And at this point, they don't know what's going on.
Right.
And next we have the Deke. If you want to talk about Deke's demise.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is obviously like a raft that's like wooden. So there's like the planks where there is little gaps between it. They don't realize it, but it actually can kind of snake its way up in through there. And then it actually starts to melt him until it breaks like the part of the raft that he is on and rips him through and then like snaps him in half pretty much as it like pulls him through until, I mean, he pretty much gets, you know, ate the same way as the other lady did.
Yeah. And you see, what I think is cool is when you see him in there, his leg is poking up with him. Like he legit got pulled through. And now, you know, Laverne freaks out and she jumps into Pancho's arms. I was going to call him Pancho because that's what Deke calls him. And he's like, Laverne, stop. You're going to, you know, and you can see this thing snaking up through the planks. Well, finally it goes away. And now this is where, as a kid, I loved this part. But as a grown man, this part really fucking bums me out, man, because Pancho lays Laverne down and he takes her top off and starts playing with her boobs. And, you know, as a kid, you're like, oh, titties, let's go. But as you become old, you're like, oh my God, this is fucking sexual assault, man. Like this, you know, his best friend's girlfriend passes out and he starts sexually assaulting her. And she's laying there. Then she's like, oh, and she looks up and it's got her. Her face is just melting off. And then she gets pulled down into the water. And this is kind of where Pancho sees his moment and he dives in the water and he swims up to shore and he gets there and he just looks out and he's like, I feed you. Whatever you want, I feed you.
Yes.
And takes him back into the water. And something else, I don't know if you've noticed this. Again, we're older now, so we pick up on things we didn't notice when we were kids. They left their fucking car running the whole time they were out there.
It's weird because they don't ever say how long they're going to be out there for. But I mean, like, I know I've been at somebody's like backyard where we've had a car out there. And if you leave it on for even like an hour where it's just on battery, it's going to either drain all of your gas or you're going to kill your battery. So, I mean, obviously there's a little bit of a plot issue where this car is on all night long and still playing music for him and everything like that. But it is weird that like they're going to drive 45 minutes or whatever it is outside of town and just leave their car running and then just drive back.
It's something I realized the older I got. I was like, they left their fucking car. Like, look, and I'm with you. You know, we've all been to the Jasper bonfires where we're hanging out outside by the bonfire and you leave the car on and you turn the radio up and you play some, you know, In Sync, It's Gonna Be Me, and Josh Miller gets upset. We've all been there, you know, so I get it, but it's just like they're way out in the middle of a lake. They're not going to hear the fucking music anyway.
Right.
That was the first thing I thought, like, you know, maybe they're doing it so they can listen to the music. But they're not, man. They're way out there that you can't hear. Like as the whole segment is playing, you don't ever hear the music until they get back to shore again.
No,
you know, it's not like you hear the music the whole time they're out on the raft. you don't hear the music. And I don't know if we said it or not, but this goes all night. They spend the night on the raft. You know, when it's down to Poncho and Laverne, they spend the whole night out there on the raft. So it's not like they were just hanging out for a couple hours. You know, this was an all, obviously there's a killer blob in the water, but it was an all night thing. You know, they were out there forever. Which now leads us into what my opinion, the scariest of the bunch, the hitchhiker. You want to start us off on the hitchhiker, my friend?
Yeah, we actually start this off with a couple that we don't know a whole lot about at first, but we do see that the power has gone out, and that then we soon learn that she has overslept because I think he's kind of like a gigolo or something, where she pays him for sex. And she's realized, though, that she's overslept and that she needs to get home as fast as she can because her husband is going to be home soon. And there's going to be a lot of explaining that she's probably going to have to do if, you know, she's too late. And this is where she kind of runs into some issues, is that it's a little bit slick out, and she actually strikes a hitchhiker that was waiting on the side of the road, kind of in a remote little area there.
Yeah, she drops her cigarette. And as she's going to get her cigarette, the car veers off and she hits this hitchhiker. And we're back to the gigolo. There's one part where she's driving and she's talking about like $200 an orgasm. That'll be easy to explain to your husband, Mrs. Lansing. You know, and which is funny because the license plate says Lansing. And for those of you that don't know, David and I are from Michigan. And so I always thought when I was a kid that this took place in Michigan, and that was like a Lansing license plate. You know what I mean? Like, so as a kid, I was like, oh, this is in Michigan. And it's cool. Not cool, but after she hits the hitchhiker, obviously she drives off, and we get a Stephen King cameo at this point as the semi-truck driver, which every Stephen King fan is always watching his films looking for a cameo because he's always usually making at least a little appearance. And it wasn't as good as Geordie, but, you know, he's there. And so she starts to go crazy. You know, she's driving and she's seeing this hitchhiker everywhere. And now, you know, thanks for the ride, lady. Thanks for the ride. You know, and she can't escape him. And every time she goes, like, she'll see him and then he'll be gone, and then he'll get closer, and then he'll be gone. Then he'll be on the roof. Then he'll be outside her window. She ends up crashing in the woods and just repeatedly hitting him against a tree. At one point, she takes a gun out and shoots the guy when he's trying to get in. Because now he's just trying to get in the car saying, thanks for the ride, lady. And his sign now says, you killed me, which I think is brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, right here on the vinyl record, you can even see the "you killed me." I don't know if you can see it or not, but, you know, and it's just I think that, you know, this one is maybe the one that's the most drug out because it's really just a woman driving, and her name is Annie. But she ends up getting home, and the hitchhiker comes out from under the car. Now he's nothing but literal skin and bones, blood and bones and muscle. And he gets up and just, you know, I think he might choke her to death or eat her face to death. Like, it looks like he's just licking her face and then she's dead.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know exactly her cause of death here.
I'm not sure either.
You know, but she's dead. You know, Mr. Lansing finds her in the morning. And then this is where we go to the Venus flytraps that we spoke of earlier. So, I want to let you go first. Your favorite between Creepshow II, the 3 segments, which one? Let's go from least favorite to favorite. How would you rank these?
It's actually interesting is that when we had talked on, you know, doing the Creepshow one, my original like favorite is now my least favorite, actually. And a lot of it is kind of what you had brought up, is that the older we've gotten, there's so many problematic parts of it that it really bothers me. But the raft is my least favorite segment after this viewing here, where I don't think the oil thing or whatever that creature's supposed to be looks great. I do think there's some really good effects, though, that they use in here as people are melting. I just really have some issues with character motivations and just kind of some of the things. And it's also kind of confusing is that the raft is out in the middle of this water, but there's a sign that says no swimming. So it's like, how old is this sign and how like long has people known that this like entity is there? So there's just too many issues that I have with it now for me. So it's my third favorite out of these ones.
I'm going to piggyback off that because I completely agree with you. As a kid, it was my favorite because I got to see a boobie. Yeah. Not going to lie, guys. When I was a kid, I was a boob hound. But the older I've gotten, the more, like I said, there's a sexual assault in this one. And that's something I was going to bring up too. There's a no swimming sign clearly posted. It's in the bushes, but it's clearly posted. And yet there's a raft out there.
Yeah.
So you have that contradiction, the contradiction of the car being left on all night. I do agree with you. I like the way some of the deaths look, but there's just so much about this one in comparison to the others that I can't get on board with. And I'm supposed to be rooting for this guy to swim across and be safe when me, as the father of an 8-year-old and 1-year-old daughter, wants nothing more than for him to be eaten by that blob after he just sexually assaulted that lady. So it's again, I know it's a different time. People can say that all they want, but right is right and wrong is wrong.
Yeah.
And what he did in that segment was wrong, and he's supposed to be our hero. So
Yep.
I am with you, my friend. Number 3 for me is also the raft. Let's go to your number 2.
My number 2 is actually one that I didn't like it for the longest time, but now having seen it again, it's actually going to be Chief Old Woodenhead is my second favorite. And really, the one thing that holds it back for me is most of the deaths are done off screen. And
Sure.
that kind of bothers me, where I kind of want to see a little bit more of it. But one of the things here that really kind of made it go up to at least a second for me is the good heart that this movie has, where we have Ray, who is such a great and honorable man. We have Ben the same way. But then we have Martha, who at first is like, these people are taking advantage of you, all of this. And then like I teared up listening to her like tell Ben when she's like, when he's getting ready to leave, about how she's like, you made me eat crow, is pretty much what she's telling him. And she's like,
Yeah.
I'm wrong. And you've made me see that. Where I was kind of like, man, that's powerful with
Yeah.
how well. But I mean, we also have George Kennedy is such a great actor. So seeing him as this elderly guy here is just, it's great. So
Yeah.
There's some issues that I have with the deaths being off screen, but still is a much better segment for me now and coming in at number 2.
Sure. Well, see, now we are going to disagree, my friend, because coming in number 2 for me is the hitchhiker.
Okay.
And here's why. I think out of the 3, the hitchhiker is absolutely the scariest.
Yeah.
As a kid, even as a kid, it was always the scariest for me. Thanks for the ride, lady. Like that scared me when I was young. It really did.
Right.
But the pacing of this one, I think, is what really holds it back for me. Annie's great. The actress is great. She plays someone that you legit don't like. And when an actor or an actress can do that, it shows their range and it shows their ability. I think she's a fucking bitch, to be honest with you.
Oh, she is.
She's this cheating wife. She runs away from a hit and run. Again, it's someone you don't want to root for. And it's just, to me, this one, the pacing of it drags a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel with this one the same way that I feel for the bug one in the first one. Like it's fun and it's scary and it's gross, but it just drags for me.
Okay.
But I still enjoy it. But that would be my number 2. So I'll go first for number 1, obviously by process of elimination. You guys have learned that my favorite is Old Chief Woodenhead. And for a lot of the reasons that you said, this one I feel has the most heart to it.
For sure.
This is the one where your main protagonist, you want to survive, Ray and Martha, like I said, with the kid, the sexual assault kid, you hope he gets it. With Annie, you hope she gets it. But with Ray and Martha Spruce, you really feel that genuine good nature of them. Like he doesn't want to leave the town because the town gave so much to him and he wants to give it back to the town. And like you said, when she comes out and she's like, I was just telling Ray how he's too trusting and you showed me that I'm wrong. And that real connection of community, which again, I'm not trying to sound too corny, but that's something you and I grew up in. We grew up in very, very small town USA. And, we had more ears of corn in our community than we did people. And it really was like that. Everybody knew everybody. You could trust people. You would go to Jasper store and they would let me buy my mom cigarettes for her and take them back to her because they knew that was okay. And I could charge stuff there and take it to my mom and then take the money back to them. Like that's what we grew up in. So I really do feel that sense of community when I watch this sketch. And I love watching Old Chief Woodenhead. I grew up, again, small town, but my grandpa had a wooden Indian.
Oh, okay.
A Native American.
Yeah.
And my grandpa would play his guitar and sing collage, and it's just like that also makes me think of this. And so that Indian used to scare the shit out of me. The Native American that my grandpa had, it was terrifying to, but watching it now, it has a lot of heart. It has, I think, the best story of the 3. It's not just, she hit someone and now we're chasing her. Oh, they're stuck on a raft. You have so many different characters and the development of each character. You see the coward, you see the bully. it's just, I really, really much enjoyed this one. So let's talk about The Hitcher as your number one, my friend.
It's actually funny because it's kind of weird that I flip-flopped because this used to be my least favorite of the segments. But this time it's actually interesting that you brought up They're Creeping Up on You, because I almost could look at this one as that hitchhiker is never there. That there's a way that I was looking at it where I'm like, maybe this is just her guilt for cheating on her husband and hitting the guy, that she keeps thinking that she sees this guy. And I was like, okay, for that being a kind of a way to think about it, I'm like, that's kind of creepy. And the other thing too is that this one feels the most to me like an EC comic type story.
Okay.
Old Chief Woodenhead would be my second one for that, where, you have these people do a bad thing and they get their comeuppance, where she keeps having this whole thing where the whole time where she keeps doing all these bad things, but no matter what she does, she can't outrun it. And in the end, she ends up getting her thing, where it almost kind of feels a lot like Father's Day in that type of respect, where these people have done bad things and then they get their just punishments in the end for it. So that is what kind of made me flip. And like you said, it's the scariest one of them all. And I love the effects that every time she does something to this poor hitchhiker, he gets worse and worse. And you can see what she does to him and how it reflects. Like at first his ankle is all just ganky and he's walking on it funny, and then as she like runs him over and everything, his face starts to become just a skeleton. So I really liked all of that kind of mixing in on top of each other there.
And like you just said, you piggybacked off what I was saying on your episode. I hope you guys have seen that or listened to it by now about They're Creeping Up on You. And that actually makes sense, because maybe she got home and her guilt just got to her and she shut the garage door and left the car running, man.
Exactly.
The carbon monoxide would have got her. So that's brilliant, because that's how I felt about They're Creeping Up on You. Maybe the bugs weren't really there. That's genius, because she even says that repeatedly. There's nothing there. You're making it up. You're putting it all in your head. So that's actually a really good way of looking at it. And the next time I pop this bad boy in, I may have to look at it that way, because that's a great way to look at it. So I don't think you and I will ever get around to reviewing Creepshow 3. I mean, we could do it. It would be fun. I'll work with you on anything. I absolutely love working with you. But so let me ask you this: Creepshow 2 or Creepshow 1? You can only watch one of them. Which one are you going to choose?
I probably still would stick with Creepshow 1 personally. I mean, part of it might be just for the fact that there is, more stories there and there's kind of an interesting type of thing there. I think also for me, it's the fact that Romero wrote the screenplay for this one, but he actually directed the original. And I think it's just a better made movie still, but it's not this, but I would actually say The Hitchhiker, if that would have been in the first movie, that might have been a contender for being my favorite segment. And I mean, I even think Old Chief Woodenhead might even make a nice run in that other one, in the first one, for kind of that type of thing. So I still would go the first one, but as I've said, this one is still, you're not taking that much of a step back here.
Right. And see, the nostalgic part of me wants to say Creepshow 2, because that's the first one I watched. And I fell in love with this movie. But I think I got to go with you, man. After rewatching this, because I really rewatched it and did a deep dive in it, just like I did Creepshow for your podcast. And I just think that overall Creepshow has more heart to it than Creepshow 2. And I think that my favorite segment out of all of them is in part 1 with Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen. I absolutely love that one. And so I guess, I mean, I love Creepshow 2, but to me, if you ask, I'm going to go Creepshow as well with you. I'm going to agree with you here, my friend. If you ask me tomorrow, I may say Creepshow 2. I think it's just, with these movies, it's just about what mood I'm in. There's not one that is definitively better than the other to me. But I think it just depends on the mood I'm in on the day. So anything else you'd like to add, my friend?
The only other thing I thought was kind of funny is that in the first one, they bring up on TV, I'm pretty sure they're watching The Lone Ranger. And I know they make some references to it. And then it's funny that in the second segment is that Pancho is the name of and then Lone Ranger would be, Deke and everything like that. I almost wish they could have somehow incorporated that into the third story, because that could have been like the ashtray in the first movie, how it's in every one of the segments. I'm not going to be mad that they don't do it, but that would just be one of those things where I'm like, that's genius to be able to incorporate that across the board.
Well, because you could have, when she, when they're in the motel room, you could have easily had that playing on the TV. Loco, like that's something that I, as a kid, the Loco. That was my I can hold my breath for a long time from the second one. You know what I mean? So again, guys, like I said, please make sure you're clicking the links down here. Follow David and Journey with a Cinephile on social media, as well as make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Check out our episode. Leave us some comments. Let us know, what is your favorite segment from Creepshow 1? What's your favorite from Creepshow 2? And which one's your favorite of the bunch? Would you prefer Creepshow 1 or Creepshow 2? Leave us some comments down here. We'd love to talk about it with you guys. As always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.